There's a moment in corporate life where you realize you are either the hammer or the anvil. For 5 years, I was the anvil. I was the one who stayed until 9 p.m., the one who drank cold coffee at my desk while everyone else went out for happy hour, and the one who did all the heavy lifting while my boss, Julian, took all the credit. Julian was the senior vice president of marketing at a Fortune 500 firm. He was charismatic, wore tailored suits, and spoke in buzzwords that meant absolutely nothing. But his greatest talent wasn't marketing. It was survival. He survived by leeching off the talent of the quiet people in his department, specifically me. But on a Tuesday morning, in the main boardroom on the 42nd floor, Julian stood in front of the board of directors and presented my 300-page global marketing strategy as his own. He didn't even change the font. He looked the CEO in the eye and said, "I spent 6 months of sleepless nights building this for our company." I sat in the corner of that room, my hands resting calmly on my lap. Julian looked at me and gave me a subtle, smug wink. He thought I was the quiet, submissive assistant who would take the hit just to keep her job. He thought I was weak. What Julian didn't know was that 3 days ago, I had discovered his secret folder. I knew about the offshore accounts, the forged expense reports, and the systematic embezzlement of company funds. And as I stood up to help him with the projector for the second half of his presentation, I knew that in exactly 3 minutes, Julian's 20-year career would be completely deleted. To understand Julian's arrogance, you have to understand the dynamic of our office. I started at the firm as an entry-level analyst. I was hungry, eager to prove myself, and naive. Julian noticed my work ethic immediately. Within 3 months, he made me his lead strategist. At first, I was flattered. He told me I was his secret weapon. He promised me that the upcoming VP promotion was mine, that he was just waiting for the right moment to pitch it to the board. "We are a team, Clara," he would say, patting my shoulder. "Your time is coming. Just let me handle the politics, and you handle the magic." So, I handled the magic. I designed campaigns that generated $40 million in revenue. I restructured our digital acquisition strategy, and every single time Julian presented the results to the executive committee as his personal achievements, my name was always relegated to a tiny footnote on the last page of the deck. The turning point came when the senior VP of Global Operations announced his retirement. It was the position Julian had been eyeing for years. But to get it, he needed to present a revolutionary 5-year expansion plan for the Asian market. He came to my desk, looking stressed. "Clara, I need you to put everything else on hold. Build me the expansion plan. If we land this, I get the promotion, and I will personally hand you my current role as Senior VP of Marketing. This is our moment." I believed him. I worked 80-hour weeks. I didn't sleep. I researched market trends, regulatory hurdles, and local consumer behavior. I poured my soul into that project. It was the best work of my career. I emailed the final 300-page document to Julian on Thursday night. On Friday morning, I walked past his office. The door was slightly ajar. I heard him on the phone with his wife. He was laughing. "Yeah, the board's gonna eat it up," he said. The girl did a masterpiece. Once they announce my promotion next week, I'm letting her go. She's getting too expensive and starting to ask too many questions about her VP title. I'll replace her with a cheap grad who doesn't know their worth. My blood ran cold. The betrayal wasn't just that he was stealing my work. It was that he was planning to throw me away like garbage the moment he got what he wanted. I stood outside his office for a full minute, my heart hammering against my ribs. The urge to storm in, scream, and throw his designer coffee machine at his face was overwhelming, but I knew how corporate politics worked. Julian was a master manipulator. If I made a scene, he would call security, claim I was unstable, and have me escorted out of the building. I would lose my job, my reputation, and my work. I needed leverage. Cold, undeniable leverage. That night, after Julian left the office at 5 p.m. to go to a luxury dinner, I went into his office. As his lead strategist, I had administrative access to his shared drive to upload presentation assets. But I decided to look deeper. I opened his local user folder on the company network. Hidden inside 3 layers of nested folders labeled Archived Receipts 2021, I found a password-protected zip file. Julian was a brilliant marketer, but he was terrible with cybersecurity. His password was his dog's name, followed by his birth year. Information he bragged about constantly in the office. I unlocked the file. What I found inside made my jaw drop. It wasn't just receipts. It was a second set of books. For 3 years, Julian had been inflating the invoices of our external creative agencies by 15%, routing the excess money into a shell company registered in Delaware under his brother-in-law's name. He had embezzled over $1.2 million of company money. He had also kept a detailed log of every executive he had bribed with luxury gifts, golf club memberships, and expensive trips to keep them from auditing his department. I sat in his leather chair, the glow of the screen illuminating my face in the dark office. He thought he was a genius. He thought he was untouchable. I copied the entire folder onto an encrypted flash drive. I didn't just have leverage, I had a nuclear bomb. I spent the weekend planning. I didn't want to just send this to HR. In big corporations, HR exists to protect the company, not the employee. If I sent it quietly, they might pay Julian off, cover it up to avoid a public scandal, and still fire me to keep things quiet. No, the exposure had to be public, undeniable, and delivered in front of the entire executive board. The big presentation was scheduled for Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. The CEO, the CFO, and all 5 members of the board of directors would be there. Julian was slated to present the expansion plan first, followed by a Q&A session. I formatted the flash drive. I created a hidden macro inside the PowerPoint file I had sent Julian. It was a simple script. When the slideshow reached slide number 45, the slide titled Implementation Timeline, the presentation would automatically execute a command to open a secondary window and play a high-definition video file stored on the local drive, a video file I had personally edited. On Monday, I walked into the office looking exhausted and defeated. I let Julian see me looking sad. He loved it. He gave me a patronizing speech about how sometimes we have to make sacrifices for the greater good of the team. I nodded, looked down, and apologized for being difficult. "That's my girl," he said, smiling. "Make sure the projector is set up in the boardroom tomorrow. I want everything to be perfect." "It will be perfect, Julian," I said. "I promise." Tuesday morning, the boardroom was immaculate. The mahogany table reflected the city skyline from the floor-to-ceiling windows. Julian was in his element. He paced the front of the room, gesturing to the slides, his voice booming with confidence. And so, by capturing just 3% of the premium demographic in Tokyo and Singapore, we project a 40% increase in regional margins, Julian announced, looking directly at the CEO. The CEO nodded, looking highly impressed. The other board members were taking notes. Julian's promotion was practically sealed. I stood in the back of the room by the AV console. My finger hovered over the remote. "Now, let's look at the implementation timeline," Julian said, clicking the remote to transition to slide 45. The screen flickered. The timeline slide appeared for a split second, and then the screen went black. Julian paused, frowning. "Ah, looks like a minor technical glitch. Clara, can you look at that?" "Of course, Julian," I said, walking slowly to the front of the room. Suddenly, the screen lit up again, but it wasn't the timeline, it was a video. A voiceover, my voiceover, began to play through the high-end boardroom speakers. "Welcome to the real expansion plan." The screen showed a high-resolution PDF of a bank statement from the Delaware Shell Company, showing a transfer of $300,000 from our marketing budget directly into Julian's personal account. Julian froze. His face went from flushed and confident to a sickly pale green. "Turn that off! Clara, turn it off right now!" he hissed, lunging toward the laptop, but I had locked the keyboard interface. The next slide showed a forged invoice side by side with the real invoice from our agency, with the 15% markup highlighted in bright crimson red. The CEO stood up, his face dark. "Julian, what is this? It's a lie, it's a hack. Clara is crazy, she's trying to ruin me." Julian screamed, sweat pouring down his forehead. He was trembling. The video transitioned to a screenshot of Julian's personal log of bribes, complete with names of 2 executive committee members sitting in that very room. One of them immediately looked down at his notepad, his face turning red. For 5 years, Julian took credit for my work. But today, he gets full credit for his own. The video ended with a giant, high-resolution photo of Julian's signed employment contract with the word terminated stamped across it in red, followed by the contact information of the Federal Securities and Exchange Commission, whom I had already emailed the full dossier to at 9 a.m. that morning. The room was so quiet you could hear Julian's heavy, panic breathing. I walked over to the laptop, unlocked it, and ejected my flash drive. I looked at the CEO. "The full expansion strategy is on your shared drive under my name, Clara Vance," I said calmly. The strategy is mine. The embezzlement is Julian's. I believe my resignation is effective immediately. I turned, walked past Julian, who was clutching the edge of the mahogany table just to stay standing, and walked out of the boardroom. By the time I reached the lobby, security was already heading up to the 42nd floor to escort Julian out of the building. 2 weeks later, the company settled with me out of court for a massive six-figure sum to keep the embezzlement details from hitting the press, and I used that money to start my own marketing consultancy. Julian is currently serving a 4-year sentence for corporate fraud. And as for me, I am no longer the anvil. I am the hammer. If you loved watching a toxic boss get exactly what he deserved, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe to the Retaliation Room. We drop new stories of sweet, calculated justice every Tuesday and Friday. Tell me in the comments, have you ever had a boss try to steal your credit? How did you handle it? Until next time, keep your receipts, and remember, karma always keeps the books.